So good morning, everybody. I was just on. I had to jump off. I scheduled this live event, and I was happy to see that I didn't. It was my first time on TikTok scheduling a live event, and I was happy to see it was quite easy for me to just jump into it. So I didn't have to do anything special. So I will try that again when I know that I'm going to go live. I'll schedule it on TikTok. I don't know if it gives more notifications. I don't know what the deal is. But welcome. This is Shamanic Coffee Hour. I'm going to talk about imagination and intuition today. I'm going to talk about how they overlap. I'm going to talk about what they are, all of those wonderful things. Um, and I'm going to talk a lot about imagination as a capacity, as an ability, as something we can hone, as something, and why that's important. Why imagination is important, and what I don't want to break something here. Video settings, presentations, no. Image, no. Design. I don't know what's going on here. um, so anyway, how is one able to imagine without training? It's a natural capacity that we have. You can increase your imagination. You can increase your imaginative capacity with some training, with practice. It's like in to me, imagination is like a muscle. Imagination, creativity is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. There's a little bit of I want to say misunderstanding or misnomer that imagination is entirely visual, and that's not true. And some people have what they call aphantasia, which means it's a condition which can be worked on, by the way. It's a condition in which they feel like they don't make pictures in their head. I think they actually are making pictures in their head, but their conscious mind is not aware of the pictures that they're making. So, because somebody who has aphantasia, I can say, "What color is your mailbox?" And they'll think about it, and they'll go green. And I'll say, "How did you know?" "Oh, I just knew." Well, something in their visual cortex was springing that out, but that the visual of that was not coming forward into their consciousness, right? So you can work on aphantasia, and I'll teach you a technique for that, actually, which would be really cool. But this is a technique that can also be used to increase the imaginative capacity, to increase your ability to imagine. So I will talk about that. So stick with me. I will give some practical advice for increasing your ability to imagine, to visualize, but also to pull in other senses, right? So like right now, if you could imagine, sort of, say, holding a lemon, right? Like, what, besides visualizing that, what would that feel like? And if you cut into the lemon, what would that smell like? You can remember that, right? You take a smell. Some of you, your mouth might actually have started to water when I mentioned that, right? Because you can get a memory, a sense memory um, of that lemon. And to me, people who are really good at writing, and one of the things that I want to do is to be absorbed in a story, and one way to do that is to use lots of sensory information to stimulate more areas of the brain. And so when I train people to journey, for example, I have them imagine themselves in a particular space, and beyond using visuals, then I ask them, like, get in touch with the other senses. What do you see? What do you, for sure, but what do you hear in the space? What does it smell like? What does the air feel like if you're in this space? And that brings them in consciousness into this space. So good morning. Good morning. Nice to see you. I may have to let my dog out in a second. If I do, it's pretty typical. Here she is, though. She's going to hang for a minute. There's Juno. Say good morning. Say good morning. Good morning. Good morning. So we're talking about imagination and intuition. And so I'm going to talk about the imaginative capacity, which is everybody has the capacity to imagine things. If you didn't, you would not be aware of the world. And so to me, when I look upon something, here's a simple example, right? I have this coffee cup. I can look at this coffee cup. It looks very solid. It's, to me, it's blue and brown and off-white, blue, brown, beige. Good morning, good morning. Nice to see you. Nice to see you. So we're talking about imagination and intuition, and I'm talking about the imaginative capacity. We're using it all the time, right? We have sensory information coming in, and our consciousness, which is, our imaginative capacity on steroids, is creating our experience of the world. So when I hold this cup up, right, and I have the visual of this cup, and it's blue and it's brown, and it has a shape, it's heavy because right now it's full of coffee. It's delicious. Good morning. Happy day of hump. Oh my. Yeah, happy hump day to you too, my friend. My divinely excellent friend, Brianne. Nice to see you. And thanks for the chuckle. Anyway, I'm a little bit, I'm blushing a little bit and distracted. Sorry. I'll get back with it. It did crack me up a little bit. So your imaginative capacity. So you see what you're seeing, essentially is, and if you're watching through your screen, it's photons that are coming out of your screen that are hitting the back of your retinas that are causing electrical signals to go in your brain. And those signals are either off or on. They either fire or they don't, right? So it's just like a binary computer. And in your consciousness, the subjective experience of looking at a mug happens. And we don't question that because it's the world that we live in. We live in this world of our imagination. We live in this world of our consciousness, creating the right reality that we are experiencing around us. I'm not saying the coffee cup doesn't exist. I can't prove that it exists, but that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is what is out here is only a small reflection of what's going on, or what's going on in here is a small reflection of what's going on in here. The brain does things like, parses and filters information and presents it in certain ways. But that's our imaginative capacity. We have the capacity. I'm imagining, even though I'm looking at this coffee cup, and we could argue whether or not this coffee cup exists, it's actually 99.9999999% empty space between the atoms and subatomic particles in this coffee mug. You are looking at something that is 0.000000001% actual stuff. Isn't that amazing? And everything that we view as solid is primarily empty space, right? So it is this mug being solid and seeing this as solid, and all of these things yes, it's happening through the lenses of our perception, through our, we're getting information through our eyes, but it's our subjective experience, our consciousness that's creating this experience. So when we imagine things, we're using that same capacity. And by imagine, I mean, I'm picturing something or smelling something or having the experience of something or feeling something that is not coming from my sensory organs, not coming from my skin or my eyes or anything. But there's so much overlap between what we experience as ordinary reality and what we're imagining that. Good morning. Nice to see you again. It's been a while. Yeah. Glad that you were able to catch me live. I haven't done a lot of these recently too. I've been crazy busy with some stuff, but I'll talk about that. I'll talk a little bit about it. I'm not going to bore everybody with my life, but I do have a couple of exciting projects that are coming up. One that I'll talk about today, um, because you can jump on it for free today, which is kind of nice. Not kind of nice; it's very nice. Anyway, so we're imagining all the time. We're imagining our world into the world that we're experiencing doesn't reflect or reflects only a little bit the underlying reality of that we exist in, physical reality, right? It's primarily empty space. There's nothing but packets of vibrating energy out here. There are no solid objects. We experience solid objects. We experience weight, we experience mass, all of these things that we know about, but everything is formless underneath it all. And the things that we think of as solid, you know, atoms and molecules and things like that, if we get further and further down into those things, they're just little packets of vibrating energy. There's nothing solid. There's no colors out here. What I perceive as red, somebody else might look at and not perceive as red. And yes, we can take wavelengths of light bouncing off things, but it's not like the redness that we experience, the redness in my glasses, or the redness in a bottle on a label of a bottle of Coke, or the redness of a fire hydrant that you're experiencing is your consciousness's interpretation of certain wavelengths of light. But red is a thing, like it's a label that we've made up, but we experience that. And so to sometimes we denigrate imagination. We say you're just imagining things, or this is all in your imagination, or that sort of thing. This is all in your imagination. This, me, you, the separation between us is all in your imagination. We're spiritually underneath it all, we're the same being. I know that could be a little hard to grasp at 8:11 in the morning. Particularly, I only had a few sips of my coffee, so getting too non-dual with it is might be a little early for that. But from many perspectives, from many spiritual perspectives, we are all the same being. We're all one consciousness, experiencing the world as little whirlpools of individualized conscious energy, of organized consciousness. That's what, and subsequently, or consequently, or I got to stop using too many adverbs. But related to that, one of my favorite authors, Jason Miller, who's written a lot on like sorcery and spirits and that sort of thing. He's got a really great book that I like, even though I don't really practice what he practices. Doesn't matter. You can still learn from him. We can learn from anything and anyone and anywhere. You can learn stuff from a toddler that, you just have to be open to it. But Jason Miller, he wrote a book called Consorting with Spirits, which is a title I love because it's a little bit transgressive. I love transgressive stuff. I've talked about transgressive spirituality. The idea of a book called Consorting with Spirits, that was the name of a crime that people who were convicted of witchcraft used to be convicted of. Consorting with spirits, meaning, ooh, you're out there talking to spirits. That's bad. I'm like, yeah, but isn't that what prayer is? Isn't that, I don't know. Anyway, he wrote a good book called Consorting with Spirits. He's got a great definition of what a spirit is that I've adopted because it's better than anything I could have come up with. And so for him, a spirit is organized consciousness. That's it. Therefore, since we are organized consciousness, we are a spirit. We could argue about what consciousness is. We could argue that there may be one consciousness, one field of consciousness, which seems to be where some of the science is pointing even. But we organize. We organize into a packet. And most humans are organized. Their consciousness is organized around existing in this body, right? This is me. When we inter somebody after they've died, we say, oh, my grandmother is there, which is always a weird thing to me. I'm like, no, your grandmother's body is there. Your grandmother is not there. Yeah, consorting with spirits. Consorting is a good word. It's kind of interesting. Well, yes, consort. Yeah, consorting with spirits. This is a consort. There's a that means something else, but well, not. It doesn't really mean something else, but to consort. Yes, consorting with spirits. Um, yeah, it's a really good title. So anyway, his definition of um, subconscious. Yeah, Jung's take is extremely interesting. One of the things that Jung recognized is that we have an individual unconscious mind, but there is a collective unconscious, and this is where archetypes live. For example, like every culture every culture in the world, every seems like every person throughout time has had certain characteristic representations in their unconscious mind that play a great deal in their life, in their dream life, in their waking life, and that sort of thing. For example, the idea of mother is an archetype. Yes, there is a biological reality to it, but the there the aspects of motherhood and that sort of thing that are common between cultures are archetypal. Shaman is an archetype because it's so old. Like the concept of shamanism is so old and cross cultural, that sort of thing. So pretty interesting stuff. So let's talk about imagination and how we can improve our imagination. If you want to, if you're interested, I'm going to give you some tips if you want to improve your capacity to visualize. I'll teach you an exercise. I don't know who invented this, or I would give them credit, but I read this exercise before and I've practiced it a little bit, and it's really cool. And um, I came upon it again when I was trying to assist people who have aphantasia, meaning they have difficulty making pictures in their head, to do shamanic work. And so I read this article by a person who is a photographer who has aphantasia, which is kind of interesting that somebody is in a creative field, a visually creative field, and they can't make pictures in their head. And the problem for this photographer was that he could not plan his shoots ahead of time because he couldn't picture them in his head. And so he did this exercise, and eventually his visual capacity increased, his capacity to visualize in his mind increased. He was able to start making pictures in his head. And his photography improved because of that. His stress level decreased, his ability to plan photo shoots improved. So, uh, so awesome for him. Kudos for him. Great. So here's the exercise. I don't know what it's called. There was probably a name for it. What you're going to do, there's a couple of important components to this. One is, for whatever reason this is important, you have to either have somebody listen to, you're going to be speaking out loud. It has to be out loud. You're not going to do this in your head, okay? Why? Because we're using more neural pathways by engaging the speech centers. You're going to be speaking out loud. It seems to be important that you are either speaking to a person or B, recording what you're saying. You never have to listen to it, and the person doesn't have to do anything with what you're saying. It's something about the person or the recording that stimulates certain aspects of your brain. This is a purely physical thing that we're doing now. This is not necessarily a spiritual or strictly psychological exercise. We are building new neural pathways in the brain between the conscious centers and the visual cortex so that your things that you can imagine, things that you can picture come forward and you are aware of them. And this will increase, even if you are fairly good at visualization, this will increase that capacity as well. Because again, you're building stronger neural pathways, right? So the exercise is simple, and you can set a timer. You do this 20 minutes at a time. It takes a while. If you are completely aphantasic, this will take a while. You will have to do many sessions over many months. Will it be worth it? That's up for you. up to you to decide. This is not a miracle cure for aphantasia. The other thing I would add about aphantasia is oftentimes, if it's the result of like a traumatic brain injury, for example, which can be the case, absolutely still seek medical attention for that. You can try this. I don't know, like I'm not a neuroscientist, so I can't tell you how this would affect something like that. It can also be the result of psychological trauma. If that's the case, seek help for psychological trauma. Seek a trauma-informed therapist, or seek out. I would say always seek a trauma-informed therapist. On top of that, you could speak to somebody who does shamanic healing that specializes in trauma as well, or some other kind of healer if you're interested in that. So this is the exercise. You're going to close your eyes. You have either you're recording it. You can use your phone or a recorder or your laptop or whatever. It doesn't matter. You never have to listen to these recordings. You just have to know that you're speaking to somebody or something that is taking in what you're saying. That seems to be important. So then you're going to close your eyes and you are going to describe out loud exactly what you see. You're not trying to imagine anything. You are just describing what you see. So when you first close your eyes, you're describing, I just see darkness. I just see dark everywhere. Maybe there's a few spots of light. Maybe like I'm seeing some colors. There's there's a little flower that's starting to form and it's unfolding into a triangle. And, you're just describing audibly what you're seeing in your mind. If you're aphantasic, that might be over and over again. You might be saying, I'm just seeing it's cloudy, it's dark. I don't really see anything, but still vocally describe that. If you do this enough, and I suggest like 20-minute sessions, you can do it daily for a year or whatever. I forget, it took this photographer months, maybe 6 months or something like that, before he was starting to like make what he considered really good pictures in his mind when he was trying to plan out photo shoots. That is an incredibly useful thing to have if you're a photographer, a fine artist of any kind. But it's also useful if you want to do manifestation work, any sort of creative visualization, and it's incredibly handy to have for spiritual work. So let's talk about the spiritual aspect of your imaginative capacity. When we imagine, we are actually forming from a spiritual explanation of what we're doing when we're imagining is we are actually forming things on the astral plane. We're using, our soul body and our mind and our emotions and all these things are forming shapes or objects or smells or whatever on another plane of existence that we also exist on. We have a soul body. It exists on a different plane, not the physical plane. But the astral plane is extremely flexible, malleable, formless. So we can form all kinds of shapes. Now there's tons and tons and tons of spiritual training that takes advantage of this, that uses this with specific visualizations, for example. So I can think of practices that I've done related to Tibetan Buddhism, where if you've seen a mandala, like a Tibetan mandala, it looks like a temple or a palace that's circular, that has 4 gates. I mean, there are many different types of mandalas, but they all kind of have the same structure. And what they're doing when they meditate on the mandala is they are visualizing themselves standing in the middle of the mandala, and the mandala is 3D. And there are gods and goddesses and other spiritual beings around them that they're imagining. And so their soul body is able to get in touch with the energies of these deities. This is where imaginative work, it's really hard. It is very difficult. They do lots of mind training. Right? It's very difficult because you are keeping 100 different things, 1,000 different things in your imagination all at once. You're imagining these, there are all of these little details, and you get better at it and better at it and better at it as you do it. Why? Because you're practicing, just like anything else. It's like, again, it's like a muscle. Creativity and imagination are like muscles. Got to work them out, you know. Um, so that's one. There are lots of practices. So from the Western perspective, um, I can think of like the Golden Dawn ritual. One that a lot of people know about is called the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram. And you're going around in a circle and you're drawing things in space and imagining that they're staying there, right? So I draw a pentagram in space and I'm imagining that it's there as a blue flaming pentagram, right? So the imagination is working. You're working on the physical plane. You're also working on the astral plane. You're also working on the etheric plane, which is the plane of the energy body. So you're bringing all of these things together to do this specific work, very specific visualizations. It's one of the reasons why, if you were to say join a Golden Dawn inspired or you know and not ancestor but descendant, a Golden Dawn descendant lodge of some sort, you would do this practice several times a day, every day. It's part of it is that you are building yourself up on the astral plane. There is some buildup required for you to be effective at the work that they're going to have you do in the future. And there is also you're building your imaginative capacity so you can do more complex rituals down the road. The LBRP itself, is a little bit daunting for some people because there's the visualizations, but you also have to a lot of the vocalizations are in Hebrew. I'm trying to think. Some of them are in Hebrew. You're intoning like names of gods and names of angels and things like that. So there's that kind of visualization, and then you're visualizing certain archangels in certain positions. And if you've done it, you're familiar with it. If you've never done it, then it'll be new to you. But welcome. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I feel like I'm gonna need. Good morning, y'all. Howdy. I always say I'm not making fun of the fact that you're from Texas. I always say howdy, like when I'm in meetings with a group of people. Buenos dias diases, good days. Buenos dias. Guten Tag, good morgon, which is good morgon is Swedish. You twang it up for people who aren't from Texas. Yeah. So sometimes when people aren't from Maine, I'll do like a thick Maine accent. I don't think I have a Maine accent normally, but sometimes it'll come out. If I'm with my family all has like really thick Maine accents. I don't know how I survived. Sverige, yeah. Sverige, yeah. Swedish. You found a Maine connection. Ah, Norwegian, yeah. Gumor, yeah. Yeah, Norwegian and Swedish, I think, are somewhat mutually intelligible, right? I have good friends in both places. So there's a yoga school out here. Morgan, yeah, in German, yeah, they're all Germanic languages. And morning in English. It's one of English. By the way, English is 85% loanwords. So 85% of the language you're speaking when you are speaking English does not originate with Old English. And Old English is very German. That's why we have words like morning. But they're similar, but don't say that to a Swede. It's funny. Like somebody I went to high school with, somebody I trained with lives in Sweden. Somebody I went to high school with lives in Norway, and she goes to She goes grocery shopping in Sweden. I mean, she must live like really, really close to the border, but she goes grocery shopping in Sweden because their taxes are less or something. I don't know. Um, yeah, they are similar because they have the same root origin language. But English is a Germanic language, technically, but we have so much Romance language, we have so much French and Latin and Spanish, and even it was funny. There's Tagalog, like the word boondocks, like out in the boondocks, is from the Tagalog word boondock. But German is fun. Oh, Norwegians shop for beer and butter in Sweden. Food is cheaper there. Yes, yeah, that's what my friend told me who lives there. Um, there was a oh my gosh, so there was so I think this was Norway. I'm pretty sure this was Norway. So there's this cheese, brown cheese, brunost, right? Brunost. At least that's in Swedish. I don't know if it's the same word, same or similar in Norwegian. And it is apparently like there's lots of fat in it. And there was a truck carrying, I don't know, a ton of the stuff or whatever, that burst into flames in a tunnel, that went through like a mountainside that people had to drive through to get from one place to another. I'm pretty sure this was in Norway a few years back. Um, yes, get ost. Yeah, it's good. Brunost. Yeah, Brunost. Yeah, whey cheese. Yes, but there was a truck that caught on fire in a tunnel, and they couldn't put the fire out because the cheese was so flammable. The cheese of your people. Yeah, it's good stuff. It's great stuff. Yeah. It took. I mean, nobody was hurt. Fortunately, the truck driver was not hurt. I think, I'm pretty sure. And but the cheese, they had to let the cheese burn for a week or something like that until they could put it out. And just try to keep it contained. Apparently, flammable cheese. I once I realized like we're way off topic at this point, but it's fun. Yeah, it's pretty epic for sure. For sure. And a little cheesy. A whole lot of cheesy, I would say. Yeah. By the way, if uh, for whatever reason, like I'm live here on TikTok, I'm live here on other stations, but my TikTok comments come up here, so I can read them in both places. If it looks like I'm not paying attention, I can read all of my comments in one screen. It's a little helpful because I'm on multiple channels at this point. But what was I saying? Oh, about the cheese fire. Yeah, kind of interesting thing. So um, years ago, I actually I was an editor on a fashion magazine. I know I don't look like it. Didn't mean I was fashionable, but I did a lot of fashion photography, and I helped to run a fashion magazine years ago. And magazine business is hard, folks. And we threw a party. We threw a big party, and when you're one of the coolest things about having a magazine is that you get invited to a lot of parties, and people want to give you free stuff. People want to give you a lot of free stuff, which is really cool. So we threw this big party, and we're like, we want to have a fashion show at our party. And so we got, clothes from like all of these boutiques and designers. The models came in. They used like young models who wanted runway exposure. We had a live band that came in. So here's where the story connects with the flaming cheese. We had a liquor sponsor. It was a company. They made a signature drink for us, but they brought in, it was a vodka company. I forget the name of the company now, but they brought in 70 cases of vodka for us, which is insane. Little bottles. We also gave away lots of little bottles. They brought in an ice luge. So they sculpted like this big penguin out of ice, and they would pour the drink down and would go on the ice luge, and you held your glass underneath. And we also had a champagne sponsor and a beer sponsor, I think. So we had signature cocktails, the ice luge, it was crazy party. But so I met with the guy who repped the vodka company, and he's like, it's a good thing I didn't get pulled over driving these 70 cases of vodka. And like, technically, it was such high proof. The amount that he had would have been illegal because he had to drive through tunnels with it. And I was like, oh, okay, well, thank you, I guess. Anyway, so that's how that story connects in my ADHD brain. That's the connection there. Took a long ways to get there, didn't it? But this is a point. This is a little bit a point of about that that I can make about creativity and that sort of thing. Pattern recognition. Yeah, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes I've got to trace those synapses, those really loose synapses back. I oftentimes find creative ideas in combining things that may not be related. And oops, okay. Sorry. Just doing a little blocking here. It's cool. It's cool. So it's I find it really interesting to combine things that don't necessarily go together, and just as a mental exercise. So here's another sort of creativity imagination exercise. Just pick two random objects in your mind and think about all of the ways that you could combine them. So like a potted plant and a basketball. What are the various ways that you could combine a potted plant and a basketball, right? Maybe I could take the wrapping off the basket, like cut open the basketball and wrap it around the pot of the plant. Or maybe I could, stabilize the basketball somehow and glue the potted plant on top of it and use it as sort of a weird plant holder. Or, maybe I could cut a hole in the basketball and put the pot inside of that. And so I have a basketball shape. So you start thinking of all of the ways that you can combine you can start with objects. BAM alchemy. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Right. And I'm glad that you mentioned alchemy. I know it's a thing for you as well. Creative alchemy. So I'll get into alchemy just a little tiny bit because it's one of my favorite subjects. In alchemy, there are these two major. There are lots of processes. But there are two major ones. There is solve and coagula. These are Latin words. Solve means where we get the word dissolve from. It means to break down, to disintegrate, right? Solve and coagula. And so the alchemical process is oftentimes, even though it might be a 7-step or a 12-step process, it is repeated breaking down and reassembling and breaking down and reassembling, breaking down and reassembling. If you think about what you need to do to, if you were to take your car in to get fixed, there's something wrong with the engine, they would have to take it apart to fix it, to put it back together. Like Scorpio season for sure. Oop. There we go. I don't know why that happened. Geez, weird things happening with my live here. I'm trying to do too many things at once. Yes, like Scorpio season. Scorpio season is also, in my mind, I'm not an astrologer, but in my mind, it is also about the planet Saturn. Death and renewal. It is about breaking down. And as a shamanic practitioner, like you shouldn't be. I don't think you should be afraid of death, because you see it as part of the natural cycle of things. That doesn't mean I embrace wanting to die or something like that. It's just that it doesn't scare me because it's just part of the natural cycle. The trees in spring, the leaves come out and they're incredibly beautiful. And then as they're dying off in the fall, they're incredibly beautiful. And then they drop their leaves and they go into a dormant state for a period. The end is a beginning. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And so the trees drop their leaves, which are, I got to do some work on getting some off my lawn. It's tough. They've been blowing around like crazy. My daughter's boyfriend did do some leaf blowing on my lawn the other day, but I got to get out there with a rake at some point. I don't know. So they drop their leaves, they go into a dormant state over the winter, the ones that aren't evergreen, and then they come back. And then in the spring, the same, the same process happens over again, right? It is a cycle. It's a recurring thing that happens year in year. And the same is true with people. We go through these phases. We go through birth and death, and if you believe, rebirth. You also have mini cycles of that. So there you have these microcosms of that birth and death process. In shamanism, we call that initiation. So initiation is always a death and a birth, not physically, although sometimes it can be replicated physically. I have been through good morning, memento mori. Yes, remember we will die, or remember you will die. Yeah, memento mori. In I say this culture, I'm not assuming that everybody is in the same culture. When I say this culture, I mean the culture that I live in. We're far removed from death, right? When somebody dies, they get whisked away to a funeral home, take care of. You might see them again if there's an open casket. You might see the body again if there's an open casket. Some cultures still do the wake thing. Some cultures sit Shiva, that sort of thing. But we don't spend time with the dead. We try to, we're removed from it. We fear it. Yeah, and arguably removed from life too. And it's interesting going and experiencing other cultures. So in Mexican culture, for example, Day of the Dead is really important, and celebrating ancestors is really important. Yes, they take your baby as soon as they're born. Yeah, absolutely. We're so often sanitized from things, removed from things. We're removed from the natural cycles of things very often. So I've spent time in the Philippines. I've been to 2 funerals in the Philippines, and at least where I was, there are different traditions depending on where you are in the country, but where you are. Oh, puppy in the Juno in the window. Yeah. I'll turn you back so you can see there. She's like looking at me. She's like, am I gonna act up? Am I gonna act up? I'm not gonna act up right now. She's being good right now. I don't care if she looks out the window, but if she takes my slippers and starts chewing them, then we have issues. You're being a good girl. You're a good girl. Look at you. There's Juno. Look at her looking at me. She's like, I hear you talking about me. These are our voices. I want to hear more about that. I want you to use your voice and tell me more about that. But I've been to 2 funerals in the Philippines. In the Philippines, when somebody passes away, the body is kept in the home for 3 days, and you sit vigil with the body, meaning somebody has to be awake in the same room with the body for the entirety of that time. There's always a candle burning in the same room. There's always a fire out. So there's all of these traditions, and even though they are Roman Catholic, a lot of these things are predate that. You can tell there's like ancient stuff that's mixed in there. Puritanical silence. Speaking of curses, I was talking about curses this morning. So anyway, my ADHD. So I've sat vigil with bodies in the Philippines. It's interesting. I think you're less afraid of a dead body if you sit with it for some period of time. Somebody, I don't know what you're talking about. Somebody just got hurt. Somebody just opened your door. I'm not sure what you're talking about. But anyway, and then there's all of this belief and ritual, and then for the person who's deceased in your family, there's a 1-year grieving period in which certain things take place. There are prayers every so often, and then there's an official end to the grieving period. Um, I don't charge. I don't know what you're talking about. Um, um, so at the end of a year, there's a ritual to ritually end the grieving period. This doesn't mean that your grief is done, but they recognize that there's grief when your loved one passes. Like in our culture, we're like, okay, move on. You've been through your 5 stages of grief. They don't tell you that grief is a cycle, that like when you have grief, you can, oh, I'm done with this phase. I'm on to the next phase. I'm almost done with my grief. No, it's cyclical. It's cyclical. And does it get easier? It can. And sometimes it can get harder. Grief is in the lungs. I think that is the traditional Chinese medicine, right? Yeah, it's absolutely not linear. I got to go back and reread my Taoist stuff because the various emotions, the yin emotions, and there are yin emotions and yang emotions, and grief is one of them, and all of this stuff. Katie, is it Katie? Katie Zitterbart. Aha. Okay. So you've had 2 NDEs. Work as a death doula in hospice. Thank you for doing that work. I can't tell you how. I mean, how important that is. Yeah, yeah. Why can't we do that? Why can't we be comfortable? We know it's going to happen. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Definitely message me her link. I'll check it out for sure. So I know that I've done a lot of work with clients. I've done a lot of work with clients in shame. And so that is often held in obviously in the lower parts of the body. But like for me, it's like actually extracting energy from the first 2 chakras, the root and the sacral chakra. And we can imagine why there's shame held there, right? So anyway, I've been talking about imagination and intuition. I got off on talking about death and all kinds of stuff, but it's okay. It's cool. This is, I'm the shamanic teacher with ADHD, so it's totally fine to go in different directions, talk about different things. But I do want to talk about intuition a little bit and the use of the imaginative capacity in intuition, right? So when I am journeying for somebody, when I'm doing like divination for somebody, for me, the experience is like traveling, and that is why it's called journeying. It's like traveling. But when I think about it, I don't necessarily think about it that way. I think about it as tuning into another dimension, another frequency, another universe, parallel life, whatever you want to, whatever terms you want to lay over that. Very hard to describe things that we don't have sort of exact parallels for in the physical world. But so my experience is journeying. My experience is going to, and we kick that off usually. And the way that I teach journeying is you start with going to a place in your imagination. So, oh, sorry. Somebody just, oh my gosh, this is totally random while I'm talking here. Kind of funny. Sorry. Totally random message. I just got a text from my high school girlfriend asking me for help with a work project. Totally random out there in the universe. So I can probably help her out. We'll see. I'm still friends with my high school girlfriend. I mean, in fact, we don't, it's not like we hang out, but like it's kind of an interesting thing. She knows me better than anybody else I've ever met and spent time with, even somebody I was married to for 20 years. She knows me. She like knows me inside and out, and it's really funny and kind of it's cool. It's cool. It's cool to have a friend like that. Even though we were romantically linked when we were 16 to 18, um, it's not that. It's like, hey, I've known you forever. We've known each other since we were 14. So she'll often like, it was just random to come up with a text out of the blue while I'm in the middle of a live, but I will respond to her. Anyway, and I'll probably help her out. Oh my gosh. Juno's whining at me now. Look, she's like, you're not paying attention to me. It's great to have that kind of connection for sure. Yeah. Anyway, today's about being distracted for me, apparently. Getting texts from my high school girlfriend while I'm on a live. Totally cool. But and then the dog's whining. Come here, come see me. Come on up. Come over. No, she's gonna sit there and whine. I think it's because she wants to play with the cat, but the cat's off sleeping somewhere. If I had to guess, that's the kind of whine. It's not a I need to go out kind of whine thing. So anyway, I gotta pitch something really quick because I gotta jump off. I gotta jump off in a moment. So, and I have something to actually pitch. I don't often, and if you've watched these things, you'll agree that I don't sell stuff very often or pitch anything, but this is what I do, and so I'm gonna put it out there. But there's also an opportunity to get into something at no cost right now. So I just started this online community. Some of you who are on here are actually in the community already. It's on the school platform. It's skool.com/Aeon Tribe, AEONTRIBE. And if you're interested in getting in, so it's an online community for people who are interested in spiritual topics like this. As part of the community, you get access to networking with everybody who's in the community. We're doing live events. So this Friday, we're doing a creative spirit event where everybody can bring their favorite art supplies. And I'm going to lead people through a guided meditation. And then we're going to create whatever we want together from there. But it was an event that lots of people seemed interested in. We've done a happy hour event. We'll do live meditations, maybe some live classes. There are recorded classes going on there. So it's a really cool, and the community is really amazing. There's really, really great people on there. So I have said I was going to leave it open for free for life for the first 50 people who joined. And I hit that first 50 people joining faster than I expected, which is great. And the community seems to be very vibrant and growing, and people are posting and people are commenting and meeting each other. And so I said, I'm gonna leave it open for free for life until Wednesday. So Wednesday at noon. So at noon today, in just a few hours, people are gonna have to start paying money to join, because I got to keep the lights on. I got to pay the bills. I got to pay for the hosting, and the platform itself is a little bit pricey. And so I'm going to start charging. But anybody who's gotten in and who gets in before noon is free for life. You'll never have to pay anything. It's not a free trial. I'll never ask you to pay. Just not asking for donations. Nothing. It's just free. You just get to be part of the community. And it is some of the coolest bunch of spiritual folks on the planet, literally bar none. And there are people from all over. We just had somebody sign up who is who practices indigenous shamanism in New Zealand. Like, I want to learn from that person. We have astrologers. We have all kinds of folks. Yeah, so if you're interested, I don't know if I can maybe I can type a message and put it up. I can't put it up on TikTok, but if you're on TikTok and you're interested in joining yoga teachers, yes, we've got yoga teachers on there. We've got several yoga teachers, Reiki practitioners, people who are just spiritual seekers. You don't have to be any kind of professional to join in. I'm going to type the I'll put it up on the screen. It won't come up on TikToks. But go there right now, because at noon today, it's going to be, I think I typed that correctly. So type that in, go there before noon today, and you'll get in for free. Or send me a message. I'll make sure you get in. Shh, come here. Stop whining at me. She's being a very whiny puppet this morning. But go there and sign up if you're interested. If it doesn't interest you, then don't sign up. But if you're interested at all, if you think you'll be interested, if you want to do the live events, all this stuff, sign up today before noon, because it'll be free. And after that, it'll still be reasonable. I'm not like out there to get rich. I just want to pay the bills. It'll still be reasonable, but if you can get it for free, get it for free, and get in there and check out the community. And you can, if you don't like it, you can definitely leave. You can definitely jump out and leave. Nobody's going to keep you in there. Where do you sign up? So unfortunately, I can't put text up on the screen on TikTok, but it is skool.com, skool.com/AeonTribe, AeonTribe. And if you're really interested in joining, send me a DM. If you can't get that, send me a DM, and I will send you the link to sign up. And do it shortly, so you can get in at no cost. So, yeah, unfortunately, I can't put. If there's a way to put text on the screen while I'm going live, I have not figured that out yet. People do it all the time. I think they use, there's a really complicated way I can stream everything through one piece of software. And I haven't figured that out yet. Even though I'm a technical genius. No, I'm not a technical genius. I'm far from it. I do certain things. It's funny. I'm very nerdy in certain things. Like I was looking at some data the other day, and I was like, I'm going to write a Python script to suck in this data and create a histogram out of it. And somebody's like, nerd. I'm like, yeah, watching YouTube. Yeah, I've done that. Watch YouTube videos on how to use TikTok. Yeah, for sure. I certainly have done that. Yep. So anyway, I've got to run. I didn't talk about intuition a whole lot, but that's okay. We talked about imagination and spirituality. I've got to run shortly. Make sure, if you're interested in the community, get in there before noon. DM me if you can't see the link and you want it. I will send it right back to you. It is a great and growing community. Some of the folks who are on this live right now are already in the community, and I assume it's been good for them so far. They probably wouldn't join my lives too. Like, man, it's really awful. It's just photo after photo of John's cat. It's not. There are currently no photos of my cat in the community. Anyway, I'm going to jump, but great to see you all. My love to you all. Take care. I hope to see you. In the tribe, in the Aeon tribe, and we'll catch y'all soon.